aerobic exercise. So anything that gets your heart rate pumping, gets you slightly out of breath is aerobic, and you don't even have to get out of a chair to do it. If you're sitting watching the telly and you do a little march, bringing the knees up, as long as it doesn't hurt your back or your hips or your shoulders, you can make that really big moves, and eventually you'll feel your heart going boom, boom, boom. So anything a little bit faster, a little jog, running for the bus, in the chair, you might get slightly out of breath. So if you're new to anything aerobic, just start simply. So just the thought of Tom Hardy makes my heart go pitter-patter. It's not that sort of thing we're talking about now. If you live in a house with stairs, walking up the stairs, walking down the stairs, after a couple of flights of stairs, you might feel out of breath. So if you're sitting and if your mobility is a little bit compromised, just moving where you are. That's great. One of the ladies who comes to my classes is in a wheelchair, has no use of her legs, but she can do the aerobic work with the arms. So if your shoulders are okay, anything with the arms above the heart works it a little bit more, because the heart's a pump. It has to get the blood above itself, up to the fingers, up through the arms. It's also quite good to keep your shoulders mobile, keep your muscles and bones strong. Anything when you're moving, it helps the joints. Think of it, the heart's a muscle, and you feel things in this area. You know, yoga teachers talk about the heart chakra. I feel emotions, particularly in the current circumstance of when we're all a bit worried, or we're feeling sad when we see these stories, and your heart goes out to them is a phrase, isn't it? So I think it's even more important when the news is so awful that we're actually moving on the hormones that generates. So if you're frightened, or, you know, grieving, or all those many emotions, your body forms things like cortisol and adrenaline, noradrenaline. They're sort of the fight or flight hormones. Well, you think about it, running away from something that's frightening you, or fighting, so you could sit in your chair and do some punching movements, that's what those hormones are for. Obviously, don't go too fast too soon. If you don't want to go faster in the chair in your pretend running, you can make the movements a bit bigger. So a sit to stand. So we talked about this in squat. If you've got an armchair, you might use the arms on the armchair to press you up, or your hands on your own thighs. So these are big muscles. So even though we're not jumping up and down or running, you're working muscles which will make you feel a little bit warmer. If you add to that the arms above the head, if you can, it's another aerobic move. You might have heard in the news, as well as aerobics, anaerobics or HIIT training, high intensity training, very good for your brain as well as your heart and lungs. So as I'm talking to you now, aerobic would be feeling a bit out of breath. So you might have done your marching in the chair, or you're sprinting in the chair, or you're marching with your arms above the head, or you're sprinting with the arms above the head, or you're punching forward, or you're punching up, or you're standing up, or you're standing up with your arms above the head. So depending on your base level of fitness, just a march in the chair might make you a little bit warmer and out of breath. So I'm quite warm today because I've got a big light on me so you can see me, because it's a dull day outside. And you can probably hear, you know, I'm breathing quite deeply, but I'm not gasping. So aerobics would be, you've done your exercise, it might be 10 seconds, might be 15 seconds, and you're sort of a little bit out of breath, a little bit flushed. Anaerobic would be you've worked, however long that is, and you're totally out of puff. So what I always ask my personal training clients is, what have you had for breakfast, or what are you planning to have for lunch or tea? And I get them to answer me in a big sentence. So if you put your hand on your heart, you will feel the heartbeat get a little bit faster. That's normal, shouldn't be any pain when you're doing aerobic or really big exercises. However long you keep that up might go from aerobic to what we call anaerobic. You can't quite get enough oxygen in just for a short period of time. So you might only need to do your pretend sprinting on the spot for 10, 20, 30 seconds. Or if you're working with the arms above the head, the same thing. You only want to get slightly out of breath for a start, and anybody who's got an underlying condition like my asthma or heart conditions, you really need to check with a doctor first before you do any extra exercise, whether or not it's walking or gardening or shopping, carrying things. You know, you need to build up slowly. But if you're already, you know, quite fit, you do the garden, you go up and down the stairs, you go for a walk every day, and you want to get a bit more out of exercise, think about short, sharper rushes. So if there's a hill nearby, you might walk up the hill rather than walk on the flat. Walking up and down the stairs safely first, or rather than marching in the spot, little sprints in the spot as if you're rushing for a bus, but only for a short period of time. And then make sure you get your breath back, or your breath back enough. So you don't want to be collapsing down, gasping, but if you said a whole sentence, you might need to take a breath in the middle of that sentence, and that burns more calories. It's fat burning. You can start with 1 or 2 sprints, and then you build up nice and slowly. Perhaps you do 3 or 4 sprints. You might add the arms in, you might add the stand-up squats, any exercise that gets you out of breath. And with Tom Hardy, I can think of the perfect exercise that would make me all flushed, Mr. Darcy. So start easy, build up. Your heart wants to be beating a little bit faster than normal. You want to be a little bit flushed and a little bit out of breath, and that's aerobics.